What's up, Wizards? Have you heard the news about what's going down in Barcelona? Marky Mark and the Wizards bunch over there dishing out details like a Shoney's breakfast bar dishes out cheese eggs. Sure, let's go with that. A lot of stuff today, not just crumbs. We got the whole submarine sandwich, new information about Lost Caverns of Ixalan, whole bunch of stuff about the Doctor Who set, and the thing that we're going to focus on today because it's the next standard set and it comes out soon, a lot of new stuff about WIlds of Eldraine. Not only did we get new info about the art and the story elements in the set and stuff like that, but we even got news of a bonus sheet, more on that later on in the video, and more importantly, some brand new cards from the set. So there's a lot to discuss about Wilds of Eldraine already. Spoiler season hasn't officially started. This is just that first little preview, that little taste that we get of the set. And so far, seems pretty delicious. So let's talk about it. And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And we're back. Now, like I said, there's a ton of stuff. There's so much to talk about today. So we're going to kind of outline it here for you, if that's all right. First thing we're going to do is talk about the arts that we got to see and some of the story elements that Morrow was going over in the panel and all that. Now, if you're not interested in any of that and you just want to see new cards and stuff, it's going to be the next thing we do after that. You just want to go ahead and skip to that part of the video? I don't blame you. Here's a timestamp. I'm a helpful guy. But the last thing we're going to do this video is kind of cap it off by talking about that bonus sheet that I alluded to earlier. There is some wild stuff on that. Now, this first one we're going to take a look at depicts a pretty major story event in the world of Eldraine right now, and it's something you need to know about if you care at all about what's happening in the world of Eldraine right now, and you should a little bit because it helps drive the design and all that. Now, what's going on right here is that everyone's having a little nap. Everyone's taking a night-night, and that's because when the Phyrexians showed up, some wise Eldrainians decided what we're going to do is we're going to cast a spell, put everybody asleep. We're just going to put the Phyrexians asleep. The problem is it put a whole bunch of other people on Eldraine asleep too. So we're kind of dealing with that right now. It's like this big Sleeping Beauty spell. Morrow actually called it our version of Sleeping Beauty, and they're going to have their version of a bunch of other fairy tales and stuff like that as we move through these arts. You'll see in just a second. I wonder if the placement of this set on the calendar has anything to do with Disney Lorcana coming out. I don't know, all speculation, but in any case, this is the Sleeping Beauty arc of the storyline right here, and apparently it's a big problem all over the plane of Eldraine. Lots of people taking a nap. We got to figure out how to wake those people up. But while I'm on the subject of Wizards versions of fairy tales and stuff like that, I might as well show you a quick procession of all of those arts, because we got to see a bunch of them today without actually seeing the cards themselves, right? Like we got to see Agatha. This is apparently the witch that's cooking Hansel and Gretel. Not speculation this time. This is exactly what Mark Rosewater said, like almost verbatim on stage. This is the witch from Hansel and Gretel, and she looks cool and mean and awesome and all that stuff. But if we're going to see her, we might as well see Gretel. This is their version of Gretel right here. Looks like an uncard. As a matter of fact, a lot of the art in this set looks like it's from an unset. There's lots of other characters like Hilda right here, their version of the Snow Queen, not Elsa. It's Hilda. There's this one that took me a few seconds to guess when I first looked at it. This card's name is apparently going to be Troyan, but he's Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. You see the beanstalk in the background. He's stealing an egg. It's Jack. There's also Red Riding Hood right here who looks awesome. I think that's objective. I don't think that's in any, no one can actually argue with that. She looks pretty cool. But there's also the Evil Queen. We got to see this. This is the Evil Queen from Snow White. Mark Rosewater even confirmed that the apple itself is going to get a card. But this is cool art. If you check out her collar there, where there's, for some reason, glass on her collar. I guess it has to work that way for the art to make any sense. But you can see in her reflection in her collar, she's actually old and a hag and all that. Oh my goodness. But it's a cool card. She features somewhat heavily in the marketing from what I can tell so far. So hopefully this is a cool character with a cool card. But if nothing else, she's going to have cool art. Coming off of the fairy tale stuff a little bit here, we also got to see versions of both Rowan and Will. As usually, Rowan looks way cooler than Will. No shade to any artists here. I just think that Rowan is a cooler character than Will, all things considered. But, you know, they got to come back. Apparently, they are desparked, which kind of sucks because I'm doing the top 10 original cards that I want in Wilds of Eldraine video. It should be our next video. It was going to come out today, but then they did this in Barcelona, so I had to cover this. But, yeah, I'm making that video. I already made my Rowan and Will card, and they're Planeswalkers. So it sucks to know they lost their spark. I got to go back to the drawing board on that. But they're here because spoilers that we got, I don't know, 4 months ago now, their parents died. It's like Kenriths are dead. The king and queen are both gone. So they are back. I assume they're going to try to fix this whole sleep spell thing and take their rightful place and yada yada. I'm sure that's going to have to be how this thing works. But one way or the other, they are desparked and they are back, and do with that what you will. But finally, in the just the arts category, we got this guy named Kellen over here. Kellen is apparently going to be a really, really important character. Amaro says that there's going to be like a 3-set arc that we're about to go on here, or a 3-year arc, something like that. It's a pretty involved arc that we're going to set out on here soon. That's going to heavily involve this character from what I understand. You see, he's taken up the quest to stop the sleep spell or something like that, and that's all I really know about him at this point. And I think that's all most people know about him. But what we do know is that he's going to feature heavily, not just in this set, but apparently in Magic's story moving forward. So take a good look at Kellen. Apparently he's important. But oh, what a slog through art, some of you are saying. You just want to see new cards. Others of you are still back there paused on certain arts going like, ooh, what's this in the background? What's that on the top left? Ooh, that's nice. Oh, Vorthos stuff. But I know a lot of you are mostly here to see cards, and you've fast forwarded to this point in the video because I time-stamped it, and you're confused as to why we're still not looking at cards. So let's do it. Let's take a look at all the cards we got to see today. First up, we got a reprint of Sleight of Hand. This is a card that I've actually wanted reprinted for a long time, and now we're at the point where I'm not actually sure that we need this card. But Sleight of Hand is back. I guess that's good. It's just a single blue mana for a sorcery. Look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one into your hand, the other on the bottom of your library. Nice of you to print this while we have Consider in the standard environment. Interesting call on that one. I think Consider is probably just a better card in every way. It's instant speed, puts the card in your graveyard, which is just better a lot of the time. So I don't know about this, but I guess there's always the argument, por qué no los dos, right? You know, why not play both of these cards? Probably because you don't need to. You know, like the mono blue deck that already plays Consider. Maybe they want to play a card like Sleight of Hand just so they can put cards in their graveyard faster for things like Tolarian Terror, Haughty Jin's power, and all that stuff. It makes perfect sense, but I'm just not sure the deck has slots for a card like this. Or maybe Is It deck, like Red-Blue Third Path Iconoclast or something, might want a card like this. But again, that deck list is a little bit tighter than you might think, even though it's just like a F-tier budget list or whatever. It's still a relatively tight deck that I'm not sure can actually, you know, put a card like this in and take out what? Take out what? What's the weakest card in Third Path Iconoclast? You tell me. I'm not actually sure. So I'm just not sure like where this actually fits in standard when we have some like better options in the first place and some really tight lists that can't really afford to play like 6 copies of Consider, right? So I'm not really sure where this fits in, but it is a cool reprint. And honestly, sometimes I go and look at prices for Sleight of Hand because I want a copy in my cube, and I'm a little shocked at how expensive Sleight of Hand is. So I'm glad that we got this reprint for no other reason than that. But let's look next at a creature land, everybody. We're getting 5 creature lands in this set, and they're all enemy color pairs. So that's kind of interesting. The only one we've seen so far, though, is Restless Fortress. This is going to get a couple of different versions. Apparently, all of the enemy colored creature lands in this set are going to have this like full art borderless treatment. This one looks really cool. But Restless Fortress is a land, comes into play tapped. It taps for either Orzhov color, white or black. But you can also pay 2, a white and a black, and it becomes a 1/4 white and black nightmare creature until end of turn, but it's still a land, of course. Whenever it attacks, defending player loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. There's like a Orzhov controller mid-range list that's popping off right now. You see every now and again, and it probably slots this thing in day 1, and it looks pretty nice in that deck. It's just nice to have creature lands back again. We got about a 1-year reprieve or so from those, and yeah, we got like Mishra's Foundry and some stuff in the format, but like I've already said, hostile, but how often do you see that card, right? So we just haven't had to worry so much about creature lands in a while in Standard. So, players who play sweepers and stuff, beware. You got to worry. You got to be on guard about creature lands again. But it's nice to have Deuter lands back, especially if they're going to be this decent looking. A lot of cool stuff about this land. I especially like it in control decks that can control the board state a little bit and then get in, again, virtually guaranteed damage that also catches you back up on life later in the game. So there's a lot of cool stuff about this. But let's look at one of those uncards next. This is Tough Cookie. Just 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 artifact creature. It's Food Golem. And when it ETBs, you create a food token. You know what that is by now. You can also pay 2 and a green to have target non-creature artifact you control. That's usually going to be the food token. Become a 4/4 artifact creature till end of turn. And of course, since this is a food, you can pay 2, tap it, and sack it to gain 3. So a 2-mana, 2/2 food, you can do that with it. That also makes your food and your treasure tokens, just your random crap, like able to attack for decent damage. And if you have enough mana and not too much else to do with it, you can make like 2 guys into 4/4s a turn. Like, it seems kind of okay, although not necessarily quite where it needs to be. But like just a 2/2 that like creates a food in and of itself, not the worst thing in the world. And it seems pretty nice with like Teething Wormlet on turn 1, right? Into this on turn 2. It could be a lot worse. That's a decent line. A fun thing to remember about this card's existence is that when they talked about it on the panel, Mario basically said that there's going to be a lot of food stuff. There's going to be animated aggressive food in this set. Again, some of the art that we've seen, like this right here, this cake monster guy, like this looks pretty, again, like unsetty. It looks like it's from an unset. Again, deal with that what you will. You can have your own opinions. This is entirely subjective. I think that it's cool, but you have to be a little sparing with that. But I think we all like the gingerbread guy from the last Throne of Eldraine set. We love the trailer where he's getting married to his gingerbread girlfriend, and then he gets like kidnapped or killed or something, and she gets all mad and she goes on a revenge quest, and we all want her to be in the set. She's featured in the marketing. We know she's going to be here. So I'm not saying that there aren't those among us, myself included, who love like cute animated food, blah, 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 right? But all I'm saying is I think there's going to be a line here that you can't quite go over. But ultimately, I do think that it's cute to include a lot of this in a set. I do. But let's move on to the return of the adventure mechanic. We got to see it today on Cruel Somnophage. I don't think this card is like that amazing, to be honest with you, but I just like that we got to see adventure again. I think that this time, again, it's just like I was saying with the animated cookie stuff, and I have to be careful with that. I think you have to be careful with how good you make adventures because they were a little bit busted last time. So again, there's a fine line you have to walk, and with this card, I think they nailed it. Somnophage is just 1 and a black for a star, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creature cards in all the graveyards. Now, his adventure mode is Can't Wake Up. It's a 1 and a blue for a sorcery. Target player mills 4 cards. People love stuff like this. People love just being able to cast a mill at the opponent. They think it's burn. It's not burn. But one way or the other, I have a soft spot for stuff like this, even though I know that just like point mill at you, especially 4 cards, sorcery speed for 2 mana, it's not very good, right? But I still have a soft spot for stuff like that. But I'm not going to call the card great or anything. I do think that the 2 mana Lurgoyf mode is pretty attractive on a card like this. Like now we're talking, Sultai Lurgoyf with like old stick fingers and Urborg Lurgoyf and stuff like that. And now you got this guy to mill yourself and you can play him out of exile or whatever. It sucks that he never goes into your graveyard. Unless you mill him, you can mill other copies of him. I'm getting ahead of myself, but one way or the other, I always felt like the Stick Fingers Lurgoyf deck needed like one more decent threat, and this one is slotting directly in. The deck is already effectively Sultai because you got to run some blue mana to kick Urborg Lurgoyf some of the time. So all I'm saying is that this card fits right in there, and it needed one more like big fat creature to just like cut heads off. So I like this dude in that deck, but I still don't think it makes that deck like competitive or anything. It's just going to be the thing I play, one way or the other. My point is that this card does not look like it goes too far in terms of adventure mode. You know what I mean? Like it's not Bone Crusher Giant or Brazen Borrower or something like that. No, this is just like, okay, the adventure mode is not amazing. It might not be worth adding another couple of mana to the cost of the card or whatever, right? So I don't know about the adventure mode, but the creature mode looks at least solid, and I think that's probably where you need to approach these adventures from. But let's take a look at Talon, the kindly lord, everybody. This is apparently Maleficent. He didn't come out and say that, but this is Maleficent. It's 4 mana, 2, a black and a blue for a 3/4 legendary fairy noble with flying. As Talon the Kindly enters the battlefield, choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. This is going to trigger a lot. I'm pretty sure this is going to trigger like all the time. My question about whether or not it's like playable in standard mostly has to do with like, okay, is this better or worse in the 4-drop slot, which it has the misfortune of being in, than Sheldred, right? Like which one do you play? Do you play both of them in some number? Do you play just one of them? I don't think that this triggers as often as Shelly, right? Because People draw cards every turn. Sometimes they draw more than one card a turn. Sometimes they draw cards on your turn. But sometimes they cast spells on your turn. They often cast spells on theirs. But obviously, it's pretty easy to get around this thing, right? Or is it? That's the problem, Like if I pick 2, 3, or 4, I'm pretty sure that's going to matter against like most decks in Standard. If I pick 2, well then now you can try and cast Make Disappear, but I get to draw a card, you lose life or whatever. You can try to remove this with a Go for the Throat or something like that, but again, I draw a card, you lose 2 life. That kind of sucks for you, right? So if you choose 2, you can often protect against the removal that would otherwise hit it, ossification and stuff like that. In the meantime, if the decks you're playing against don't have ossification, they might be playing Thalias and Valiant Veterans and stuff like that. So they're losing a lot of life. You're drawing a lot of cards in that situation. If I name 3, well, like every good card in Standard's a 3-drop, so that helps. Or 3 power or whatever. And then a bunch of cards in Standard are also obviously very good at the 4-drop slot. Like if you go first, drop your 4th land, drop this. In anticipation for the Shelly, you just say 4, that seems like it's a pretty decent line too. Yes, it dies to removal, but if it doesn't do so right away, it can cause some like major headaches within just a few turns. That sounds like somebody that we're all really familiar with that I've already brought up in this conversation. So this could be a sick little card right here, and I want you to keep your eye on it. But up next, let's take a look at a card that when you learn about why it exists, you realize it probably shouldn't exist. This is Moonshaker Cavalry. It costs 8 mana, 5 and 3 white, for a 6/6 flying Spirit Knight. And when it ETBs, creatures you control gain flying and get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Stop me if you've heard this one before. So I promise you that what I'm about to tell you is not made up or speculation or just something I came up with in my brain or whatever. This is what they actually said on stage in Barcelona. They said, we often get questions. Why is there no white Craterhoof Behemoth? And we're like, I guess we'll just make a white Craterhoof Behemoth. But it's a silly question. People are really asking you. Are people really asking you why there's not a white Craterhoof Behemoth? That's Like, I know you can't just like write people off to their face or whatever, but I would probably be like, because Craterhoof Behemoth is a green effect. And that's, like, do people ask why there's no blue Craterhoof Behemoth? You know what I mean? It's like, what? Why is there no green dark ritual? I don't know, because it's a black effect. I don't know. What do you want from me? Why is there no white lightning bolt? It's pretty obvious. Like, apparently, Wizards got this question so often that they just gave Commander players a white Craterhoof. It's insane. Like, it's in the main set too, by the way. This is Standard legal to play as far as I understand, but I'm not sure how much play it sees in Standard unless it's some kind of wacky reanimation target that you'd rather reanimate than Atraxa for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe you got a bunch of dudes out. It could be, but one way or the other, silly card in Commander, right? It is what it is. It is a white Craterhoof Behemoth. I think that Trample, it's really hard to say. I think it's a side grade, right? It's not an up or down grade. It's probably a side grade to Craterhoof. It's kind of debatable on whether or not flying gets through more guys than Trample does. I think often flying will get through more guys than Trample does, so I really don't want to call this a better Craterhoof Behemoth because, I guess white has to like ramp into it in like weird unconventional ways, whereas green can just ramp into Craterhoof. Like green still has that, right? You can just play a bunch of elves, ramp into Craterhoof, and my day's over. But white probably has to jump through more hoops to actually get its Craterhoof down. But I just still am stuck on the idea that people actually, for real, asked you, like, why is there no white Craterhoof? And then you actually made one. You didn't have to do that. It seems, I don't know, it just seems silly to me. Am I the only one? But we got one more on the day to check out, and this is my favorite card of the day pretty easily. This is Ashiak Wicked Manipulator. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 5 loyalty planeswalker with a pretty good passive. If you would pay life while your library has at least that many cards in it, exile that many cards from the top of your library instead. The +1 here is look at the top 2 cards of your library, exile one of them, put the other into your hand. -2, create 2 1/1 black nightmare creature tokens with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if a card was put into exile this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. -7, target player exiles the top X cards of their library, where X is the total mana value of all cards you own in exile. Now, first thing you may notice is that Ashiak is a planeswalker. They didn't lose their spark, like, whatsoever, so what gives with that? Yeah, apparently, from what Marky Mark says, there's going to be 1 planeswalker per set for the next X number of sets. He didn't really give us an idea of, like, how many sets it was going to be, but for the next few sets, there's going to be 1 planeswalker per set, and that planeswalker apparently is going to be like relatively powerful because, you know, ain't a whole lot of planeswalkers left. And this is a good example of a pretty powerful planeswalker, in my opinion, at least. We'll talk about the passive in a second, but first I just want to give some praise to the fact that this is a 5-mana planeswalker that kind of effectively starts at 6 loyalty, right? It comes in with 5, you +1 it, that's 6. But it's also just like traditionally a good planeswalker, right? Like the first one is that you get to get one of the top 2 cards. You get to Sleight of Hand, effectively, right? You get the top best card of the top 2 of your library for a +. That's decent on a planeswalker. I'll draw a card. Second ability is make a couple of guys to protect it, right? Not only make one guy to block for it, make 2 guys to block for it. And those guys can get bigger, and this can feed into those guys getting bigger too. So that's pretty cool. Makes 2 guys to protect it and get bigger and take over the game as time goes on. And then finally, its ultimate is really only a couple of turns away. You know, it starts at 5, 6, 7, third turn it's in play. You can use its ultimate, which is pretty good and actually could mill your opponent for a buttload of cards. You know, not only is this putting cards in exile, but theoretically you could be playing other stuff that put your cards in exile too. You know, you could basically, to Pokemon players out there, you could be playing Lost Zone Box in Magic the Gathering Standard. I really think that's part of, by the way, in case you don't know what Lost Zone Box is in Pokemon, which is going to be like 90% of the people watching this video or more. It's you put stuff in your exile, and then depending on how many cards you have in your exile, you get bonus effects, like your guys don't have to have energy on them to attack and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that this card takes at least some inspiration from that whole like, oh, how do we use the exile zone? And, oh, what if that was some sort of gameplay area that mattered and all that? I really think that there's something going on there, but either way, some inspiration taken, but one way or the other, as far as all the stuff this planeswalker does, plus minus ultimate, I think it's great in terms of like how much loyalty it has for the rate that you're paying and all the stuff that it does for you. Just in terms of like, is it a solid planeswalker from a traditional standpoint? Like, yeah, I think it's more than solid, but that passive has got a lot going on. Now, don't be confused. This isn't like if you would lose life. It's if you would pay life, but there's a ton of tricks in standard for something like that. For one, is this the thing that finally makes Staff of Completion playable? No, it's probably not. Staff of Completion isn't very good, but there is stuff that people already play in standard, like Tenacious Underdog. This works pretty well with, rather than actually having to pay life for the blitz cost. Just put a couple of cards in exile. It seems like way better a lot of the time because, you know, I've seen people only have 4 life left and they're like, I really wish I could blitz Tenacious Underdog. I've been that guy. Turns out you got to walk a fine line, but it also works with stuff like Gix to a pretty good effect. I would much rather just exile cards and pay life a lot of the time, especially mid and late game, to draw those cards with Gix. So pretty cool, I'd say. But there's also stuff like Defiler of Flesh, the Black Defiler. This thing is kind of cool with Ashiak because, you know, it helps you cast the Ashiak even if you don't get the 5th land after you play it. And rather than pay life to actually like accelerate into stuff with Defiler, now you just like rip a couple of cards off the top. Who cares? That's way better. So I like Defiler together with Ashiak a good bit, but they also work really well with the real Wombo combo here. Lord of the Forsaken. If you just have like all 3 of these cards out, that's nice because again, like Defiler helps you ramp into Lord. That's kind of cool, but you don't have to have the Defiler. I just like Ashiak and Lord of the Forsaken together. Lord of the Forsaken basically, along with the Ashiak, just says like exile cards from the top of your library, create that much mana, and then play cards out of your graveyard. That's disgusting, right? Like, am I the only one that thinks that's like repulsively good? Like, it's probably, I don't know if it's going to be good enough because, you know, Lord of Forsaken's really expensive and all that to play, but still, I think there might be something there if you do want the Wombo combo late game and just make all the mana in the world and play your whole graveyard or whatever. Like, maybe it's worth a shot. I think it's cool. But that is all 7 cards that we've gotten to see from Wilds of Eldraine so far. And some of them are crazy. You know, some of them do look like oh, these look great now, and then we'll forget about them when the set comes out and nobody cares and they never see play. There's a few of those. But some hype stuff, especially to sort of build the world of Wilds of Eldraine and all that. So like that. But one more thing to talk about before we get out of here, and that is this bonus sheet. Now, like a lot of bonus sheets, it's going to be 1 card per pack, and I think there's a total of 63 of these in the set. Obviously, some will be less valuable than others, but we got a pretty good spread of them so far to look at today. Some of them are less valuable, some of them are way more valuable, but one way or the other, I think it's fun to take a look at these, especially with some of the art treatments they've been given. Now, this time around, the bonus sheet is going to be all enchantments. That's right. It turns out the set will have some things to do mechanically with enchantments. Enchantments will matter in this Eldraine set in Standard. We haven't gotten to see too much of that today, but I did want to impart that information to you. Get ready for that during spoiler season. Apparently it's not quite Theros or anything, but Mark noticed that there's a lot of like artifact planes and not a whole lot of enchantment planes. So get ready for a bunch of enchantments, green-white enchantments players in Standard. I see you. You're going to have some nice stuff in your decks. But as far as this bonus sheet goes, none of these are going to be, unless they're already legal in Standard, none of these are going to be legal in Standard. It works the way that most bonus sheets do, again, right? So don't think you're going to be playing ridiculous like commander staples in Standard or anything, but there are some, with that in mind, ridiculous commander staples in this thing. So let's take a look at all of the, whatever they're called, enchanted tales is what I've got written down. Is that really what they're called? Fair enough. Let's take a look at the enchanted tales. Now we got some, I guess we'll call them normal things like Curiosity and Prismatic Omen. And yeah, these are the normal ones. And these are pretty good cards and they're gorgeous too, especially that Prismatic Omen. No shade to the artist on Curiosity. That looks very good too. But man, that Prismatic Omen, like that is the style that I likes. These aren't like super important cards, but they are important to some people, right? I mean, there's plenty of commander combos and whatnot with Curiosity. So cool card, but we got some other stuff like Aggravated Assault in here. Check this thing out, man. It's just cool to get a reprint of Aggravated Assault. Just take extra attack steps and stuff like that. Apparently the Japan market is getting a few of these in a different art treatment. Like this is the American one on screen, or just the non-Japanese one, I should say. More accurate there. But the Japanese market is getting this Aggravated Assault. So that's kind of cool. I like when different markets get different arts and stuff. It's fun. But there's also stuff like Greater Auramancy. Again, if you do want to build like the Sithis Harvest Hands deck or really any enchantments deck in Commander, you probably want a Greater Auramancy, and hopefully this brings the accessibility up and the price down, although I doubt it. This has been an expensive card for a while, and this is a gorgeous art treatment. Both the one that we're getting in, domestic packs, and also this Japanese version is just beautiful. All the Japanese versions of these cards are gorgeous. Necropotence we get in this set. That's amazing. And look how cool this art looks, by the way. I just really like this Necro art, but we also get stuff like Smothering Tithe. How cool is that? There's some real commander bangers in the Enchanted Tales, and it's some really good art on that one too, but it gets better. We get stuff like Rhystic Study is in here. There's Doubling Season, because of course there's Doubling Season, and oh my goodness, the Japanese art on Doubling Season, I want it like so bad. It's probably going to be like $1 billion, so I'm never going to have it. Not going to happen, but I really like that it exists one way or the other. We got some heavy hitters, and that is only a smattering of them. Again, there's going to be 63 of these, and I've shown you 10, 11, something like that. So there's a bunch more of these to see, and if the rest are anything like this, it's going to be a real nice bonus sheet. But who has all of the news about Wilds of Eldraine? It's not even all the news, right? Like I said, there's a bunch of Doctor Who information, a bunch of Lost Caverns of Ixalan stuff that I probably need to do a separate video about here in the next day or two. So get ready for that, I guess. There's just a lot of new information, and it's going to keep pouring out of the sides of the building here over the next couple of weeks. They're going to preview a bunch of new products, so stay tuned with the channel. We're going to try to keep up with the news as much as possible while still getting in other stuff that we need to do around here, right? The patrons already picked the next video as the top 10 cards I want in Wilds of Eldraine. Like I said, got to go back to the drawing board on that one a little bit with a card or two here and there, but this information has informed some things and given me some cool ideas. So stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff to make sure you get that video. And you can also check out a video that I'll be making in the next week or so here on an alternate channel. We're going to be talking about the top 10, not only cards, but top 10 sleepers as well in Pokemon Obsidian Flames over on the Pokemon channel. That will probably be strictly Better PTCG if you want to go ahead and check that out. Maybe subscribe, get ready for those videos to come out. But don't worry, still a Magic boy, and we're going to be focusing super heavy on the news of the days moving forward. And once spoiler season hits, boy, we're going to be all about spoiler season. I cannot wait for a new Standard legal set to come out. It's been 5 months at this point. I don't even play that much Standard right now. I've been playing Pokemon TCG and Pokemon on Switch. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon, but one way or the other, I cannot wait for a new set to come out, affect Standard, do something in Standard finally, because I just feel like we've been playing the same 5 cards for the last 5 months. And so really am hyped for this set to come out. It's already looking cool. The themes are there, the art style's there, and even some of the cards we've already seen get me pretty hyped. So really liking the look of the set so far, and really at this point, it could be almost any new standard legal Magic set, and I'd be really crusty hyped for it. So, I'm excited. Stick with the channel. As soon as spoiler season hits, we'll have a lot to talk about. But there is one more thing to do, I guess. We got to reach over here onto the couch and pick out the couch card of the day, while I also tell you to check out the Twitch so you can see me play some Magic. And if you want to, you can support me on Patreon at patreon.com/SBMTG. $1 a month is all it takes to vote on content. The card I'm holding in my hand does not feel like a Magic card. You feel really slick. What are you? You're a Magic card. Oh, it's because it's foil. Oh, maybe that's why. We got an Orb of Dragonkind, everybody. You remember Orb of Dragonkind? It was supposed to be important in Standard. Not only does it ramp you into your dragons for just 2 mana, it's 2 mana rock for the dragons decks, but also helps you draw into a dragon later in the game. Seems good. Never really was good. I played it in some decks, for like budget lists. I feel like we played it a few times, and it was like fine, but it just never really did the things that I felt it was supposed to do in Standard, and a lot of other people too. Seemed like a solid card. Didn't really matter. But anyway, I bet a foil Orb of Dragonkind is worth at least something, because like Commander players, or maybe, who knows. But one way or the other, that's all I've got for this one, everybody. I hope you enjoyed all the goings on. Let me know how you feel about the new cards, the themes, what you want to see in this set. One thing I should give you a parting shot about, because I haven't given you this information yet, is that all the draft archetypes in the set, there's 10 draft archetypes in total in this set apparently, and they are all going to be based around fairy tales, right? Like the green-black one is going to be Hansel and Gretel, and the black-white one is going to be Snow White, right? I would imagine the blue-white one might be the Snow Queen. I haven't really, who knows? But we don't know what all these draft archetypes are going to be yet, and what colors they go with, and what, fairy tales are going to represent. So that's a fun thing to speculate on. Let me know in the comments, like, what you want to see from this set. And again, stay tuned for all the stuff on the channel. There's a bunch going on. Subscribe to the Pokemon channel. Do all the things, whatever. You don't have to do any of them. Honestly, I'm just glad that you're here. That's basically all I got for this one, so I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.